Getty's ear. Michael Alan Penning was Conservative Minister of State for the Armed Forces from 2016 to 2017. Sir Michael Alan Penning was Conservative Minister of State for the Armed Forces from 2016 to 2017 and issued a plea to Theresa May about the state of the armed forces. He said he is speaking out because the armed forces are being cut to the bone and the UK is close to no longer being taken seriously around the globe. He said, "Someone has to stand up and say, enough is enough, we're down to the bone now. The army is too small. An army of 82,000 does not give us enough ready troops to deploy. If numbers go down anymore, we are simply not going to be able to do what the British public expect of us, from our NATO and UN commitments to humanitarian missions." It is the first time he has spoken out since stepping down in June last year. He makes a plea for Theresa May to relieve the massive pressure on the MOD budget by making the Treasury pay for renewing Trident. He added, "If you continue to develop the replacement Trident from the existing budget, that will dramatically affect the operational capability of the three armed forces, particularly the Army. I want the PM and the Chancellor to fund Trident replacement with a new pool of money that is kept entirely separate. For the rest of the MOD's budget, we've sent them there with about 3 tanks. We still have tanks, but it takes an absolute age to deploy them." The former Armed Forces Minister described military operations he presided over when in government are now in serious jeopardy because of the funding crisis. Troops have been sent to Eastern Europe to fend off Russia with light desert vehicles because it is so hard to deploy tanks. The Navy cannot find enough spare ships to mount a pirate fighting operation off the coast of Africa, and the Royal Navy frigates tasked with tracking Russian submarines can only stay at sea for a maximum of 6 days because they are so short-staffed. Sir Penning claims Russian ships pass through the Channel not just for fun, but to test us. Speaking to The Sun, he added, "We're tracking them with Type 23 frigates that are not fully crewed. They can only stay at sea for 5 or 6 days because they don't have fully rotational crews." The Conservative minister's comments come before the Prime Minister meets French President Emmanuel Macron for military talks at Sandhurst. He claims the SAS and SBS, who are on the forefront of fighting Islamic terrorism, are exhausted and people are leaving in ever larger numbers because they have been deployed on missions continuously since 2001. Getty, the former minister, is worried troops will be sent into battle without proper equipment. Sir Mike said, "The area that is becoming more and more stretched is our special forces, who are almost continually on deployment. They have wives and kids, they need to do courses, and they have families. That does lead to serious retention issues, which is also a problem across the board." He warns the armies equipment is also in a state of crisis and much of its armor has been scrapped to save money. Sir Penning is a former soldier who served 8 years as a Grenadier Guard. Getty frigates can only stay out for 6 days because they are so short-staffed. Hay continued, "You see will a decline in exercises, in flying times for fast jet and helicopter pilots, and we will get back to sailors shouting bang instead of firing real shells. I cannot condone going back to a time when we send our troops to war with just 5 rounds of ammunition, as they had to in Iraq." Responding to the claims, a Downing Street spokesman said, "We are firmly committed to supporting our brave armed forces and giving them the backing they need in the face of intensifying threats. We have a £36 billion defence budget which will rise to almost £40 billion by 2021, making us the biggest in Europe, second biggest in NATO and 5th largest in the world. We are also committed to increasing the defence budget by at least 0.5% above inflation every year for the rest of this Parliament."